Hello, can you hear me? Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you give me some feedback? Or just wait another few minutes? Yes, thank you. All right, guys. Can you hear me all right? Okay, let's get started. So, share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? I'm sharing the code screen. Okay, cool. Great. All right. Thanks for joining another lecture for today. Some already checked the lecture slides, and you know that we are going to introduce a little bit about programming. Yeah, this is a special lecture. So you can treat this lecture as a guest lecture. Because in our experience, we have a lot of students that join in this unit have no backgrounds of IT, have little idea about programming, about technology. So we're hoping that this lecture will help you to get some basic understanding about how a web application or how a mobile application is running. So everything covered in this lecture, you didn't need to vary it, and we will not be include anything about technical stuff from this lecture in the final exam, and no requirement for you to implement anything, even the basic HTML in your prototype. So don't worry about that. So you just try to understand the basic structure. If you would like to do some basic programming just for fun, that will be great. We are going to provide, basically we have already uploaded a tutorial slides to the Canvas. So basically that's a step-by-step guide to help you to build a basic web page. And then the web page allow you to register a new user, and this new user's information will be stored in the database. And that's it. That demo will be implemented today in the lecture, but we are not going to code line by line. So basically, I will copy the code to a particular file and give you some explanation, and then we run the file and try to understand what the file can do, can help us to do for our website. So basically, you can treat this lecture as a very, very basic implementation of a website. So because in your website, you are going to build many features, includes many pages. For now, today, we are just to include a few pages, but basically we demonstrate everything from the technical perspective. All right, so let's get started. If you already have some background, it's okay. Just you can stay here and then enjoy it, but no pressure. Don't worry about the technical stuff. All right, let's get to that. And let me know if you have any question. But during the lecture, we don't want you to follow me to to do the coding at the same time, but you can spend a few hours after this lecture or in the tutorial to follow that document. Okay, so first of all, as I mentioned, that there will be two objects we are going to achieve for this lecture. The first one is we want to understand the basic components of a web application. And the second goal will be understand the interaction between components to handle user requests. So in the previous lecture, actually, we introduced quite a lot about web application, the e-business website, and in some of the lecture, we mentioned that, okay, and there will be a client end, there will be a the server end, and then there will be interaction between them. And in the server end, we also have something like database or some middleware. So today we are going to cover this kind of topic, and we will give you the basic introduction about each of the components. So first of all, let's have a look about web programming. So what is the web programming? It is a very broad term for the work involved the development of a website. For now, web development also involve the mobile development. So basically, they are using the same concept from the technical perspective. The only difference I would say is the mobile application is using some specific framework like running on the mobile. But basically, from the high-level architecture perspective, they are using the same technologies. So after the web programming, we in the previous lecture, we introduced that there will be two kinds of web pages, the static web pages and dynamic web pages. So the static web page displays the fixed content for all the users. All the users access this particular page, they will see the same results. That's the static web page. But for the dynamic web page, because we want to provide individual or personalized information for each user based on their conditions, based on their request. That's why the dynamic web pages are more popular right now. So you can see so to understand the interaction between server and the user end, the client end. So that is the basic structure. So no matter from the desktop computer or mobile app, so you open your app, you open your mobile app or the website, and you input something in your web browser or send some request on your mobile application. And this application will be sent to the server, right to the website server. And on the website server, there will be some code. For now, you just enter like that. A piece of code to receive the user's request and try to interpret the request, probably based on the request the server that piece of code need to communicate with the database and maybe insert some data, delete some data, search some results. And then when the codes get the results, and they will send back to the user, and the results will be showing up in the website, web browser, or the mobile application. That's the very, very high level interaction between a client and the server. But we're going to have another more detailed interaction between them, and then we'll break them down into smaller steps. Okay. So to introduce the web application, the first thing we want to introduce to you is the application server. So the application server is a server to host your website and process the incoming request. That's the very simple description about it. The server could be very complicated from the technical perspective, but the main job of this server is get the request handle the request, and send some feedback to the user. So here we are going to introduce a very small server, but popular. And then you can see what it looks like. So now today I'm going to introduce a server called Tomcat. So basically Tomcat is a quite small server, just particularly host for Java applications or Java or websites or applications that are written by Java technology language. So basically, how does it look like? The server is a place that hosts your website. So your website could be like a project. And then you just put this website into that server and then run this server. And then someone can reach out to your website. That's the basic logic. So now here I prepare an empty server. And just an empty server. And then if, say, for example, if I start it, run it, and now I can actually access this server. Say, for example, I can access it like localhost 8080. And now I can access the server. The server is running at the moment. So this, you can understand this is the whole page of the server. Of course, this server has some like its own settings, but at the moment there's no project under it. It's a like empty server. So in the next step, we are going to create a project and add this project into this server and run the server again. And you will see this new website. Okay, any question about this server? Okay, let's continue to another thing. Okay, first we understand the server. And now the second one is we try to understand the HTML, hypertext markup language. So when we are building a website, so HTML are the basic elements to showing our content. So say, for example, we introduced that the catalog model that we displaced all the product information in a particular web page and then displays with this web page. When the user accesses this particular URL, they will see different products based on or sorted or displays organized based on the different categories. So all that page can be implemented by the HTML, and HTML can be can apply to the dynamic and static pages. For now, we are just to give you an example to show a static web pages, static HTML web pages. Let's have a look, and then let's do the running. So now I already prepared this page. So now you can see that I already create a project called ELEC 3610 test. So you can imagine this is your website. Okay, this is your online shopping center. So, but now we just call it the ELEC 3610. And now under that, I want to create a plain text, plain web page, just to show very simple information. For now, you can see that, let me phrase this a little bit. So you can see from this coding that, this one is very easy to understand. Title, that's the title of the page. When you open the web page, it will show on the web browser, the tab on the tab. And then for a page, there should be a body section. basically the body section will be displayed on the page itself. And then very similar to, like, for example, if you're editing a document, there will be different level of heading, right? So for now, I just give a, this is the heading of that page. And then I also create a paragraph. So I can create another paragraph, say for example, paragraph 2. Yeah, that's everything of my web page. And for now, I just add these projects to my web server. Okay, now you can see that, okay, my web server, my application server already has my website's code, right? And now if I start the server, okay, the server is running okay. And now I need to access this page. So how to access this page? So you can imagine this as the root URL of your website. And then now I want to access my project. My project is ELAC 3610 text. And then the next step is I want to access this particular page, which is the plan.html. So that's the whole URL of accessing this particular page. And you can see that the 4 elements we introduced, the page title is shown here, and the heading, because the heading is just a difference of font or style of that particular text. And then you can see that it's displayed in a different style. And for the paragraph, and we have 2 paragraphs, is showing here. So this is the static web page, right? That means everyone at any time they access this particular web page, they will see all this information, and it's never changed. So this is how you interact with a very, very basic static web page, a static HTML page. Okay. Any question about this? Okay, for now, the interaction, for now you can see that the interaction is pretty clear, right? So now we only access this page, and the server, on the server end, we didn't write any code to handle the request, right? Because the code, when the server received this request, that they just let us know that, okay, this is your feedback, this is your web page, and then the user just to see this as a feedback. In the next part, we are going to introduce a more complex process, which is we are going to register user. So for example, for your website, you have a page of registering a new user. So your website should allow the user to input their personal information and submit this information to your website, and your website will track this information and store the information to your database or somewhere on your server end. And next time when the user try to log in your website again, and there should be a way that you can get the data the member registered, right? So for now, today, we are going to introduce the whole process of finishing a registration. Say, for example, you can see from the, I break down the process into steps. And you can see that this is a user, this is a web browser, and this is your website. Imagine that a user input abc.com register.html. That's your ABC is your website, and register.html is the website register page. Okay, when they input this page on the web browser, you input this URL, and the web browser will send a request to the website, right? And the website will get the request and say, okay, you want to see the register.html page. I will let you render this information to your web browser. So for now, on step 4, the user should be able to see the registration form or registration page. And the next step is the user needs to input the registration info in that registration page and send the registration information as a request to the website. And the website will get this information and see, okay, this is the information are correct. So now I need to save this data into the database. So there will be some communication between the registration processor, which we can imagine that's a piece of code to handle the request. There will be some communication between the processor and database. When the communication is done, that means the user has been saved to our database, and then now we can send back a feedback to the user, response information. And the user will see, okay, my registration has been successfully handled, and now user can move to the next step, which is normally is the login page, and then they can use the new information, the register information, to log in. And here we didn't show the login process, but you can see that's the whole process. The most important part is when users send information register information request to the processor, and how the processor get that information, how the processor communicates with database to save this data, and how the processor sends the feedback information to the user. And this part will be the main steps we are going to show in today's lecture. All right, let's do this step by step. First of all, we need to create a dynamic web project. Actually, I already created. So here I listed some key difference between a static website or a static web page and the dynamic website. So you can see that for static, most of the information in the website is pre-built content, and every time when the user accesses this page, the information will be displayed as the same. But for the dynamic, the content is generated quickly and changed regularly. Means the information is different based on the user's request or based on the user's information. And both of them can be implemented by HTML, and the dynamic websites can also insert some other programming language to make this HTML page more complex, so that they can handle some requests based on users' different information. And the third difference is the static websites will send the same response for every request. That's obvious. But for the dynamic, we are the dynamic website will send different kinds of response based on the request of the user. For static websites, it cannot connect to the database, but dynamic, generally we can connect with the database and have some interaction with the database. That's the basic information. We already did that. We are not going to show this, but let's start from the second one. it's about creating a registration page. Let's have a look at the registration page. I already pasted that information in this section. And you can see that this page is comparing with that. Okay. This is the original plain a static page. And it's just to display some text in that page. But for now, in this new register page, we have like more complex elements in this page. Same for the this page. The register page also has a title. We call it user registration. And then in the body section, so we have a header, but now you can see here we have a form. So form is a kind of an element that allows the user to submit some request to the server. So you can just imagine it's like a form, like on your paper. Say for example, someone asks you to fill out something, and that form can be submitted back to the server. And then you can see that there in this form we have prepared different information. First, we have a section to allow the user to input the username or the name of that user. And then we ask them to input the passwords and then confirm the password again and make sure that you are input the correct passwords and they are the same password. And then we ask the gender of the user. So here you can see that we give a name of that selection as gender, and then we include two options in that select. And another thing is we ask the user which year of that user, for example, in the university, the year 1, 2, 3, 4. And the user can select which one can apply to him or her. And then lastly, we have a button to submit the whole form. Let's have a look. Let's run this form, run this project and access this page. Let's save it and run this project. Same as the previous procedure, we access this project, but now we should access another page, which is register.html. And then we'll access it, and you can see here. This is the title, and this is the header. And as we shown that we have a place to allow the user to input username, password, confirm the passwords, and then allow the user to select male, female, and select one from like which year applies to this user. And there's a submit button. So you can see that's a very, very basic online form. And now we get this information. The user is already be able to input this information in this form, right? That seems all right. But one problem is when the user submit this button, where this information will be submitted to? That's the key question. So in the next step, we are going to allow the user to click this button and send this button to the server, and the server will get this information. Okay. All right. The next step, after creating this registration page, let's try to allow the server to receive this information. So here we actually just write a very, very simple registration processor. Now we already have this information, right? The registration page. When the user clicks the submit button, we should have this processor ready in our website site, and then allow the processor to interpret this request and handle this request. So this piece of code is for that purpose. So you can see that, let me give you some explanation about this. So this piece of code allows us to first get all the information the user submits to the server. You can see that request.get parameter and username. That means, okay, I know you send a request to our processor, to my processor, and then I want to know what information included in the submitted form. And the form, you can imagine the form as a package, but for each piece of information is attached with a parameter. And now for this line, I want to get the information of user's name. And the second one is I want to get the password. Third is the password confirmation and gender information and which year this user is. So after getting this piece of information, and then I just write back to the user. So here you can see that this piece of code is we are just trying to write some information to the user, and the user will see some feedback from this server. So basically here you can see that we are not do any complex process. Basically, we just extract the information and form this information as a piece of feedback and send this feedback to the user. That means in here, when the registration processor receives the information, there will be no communication for now, because connecting with database is a bit complex. We are not showing that in the first step, but here we just get that information and respond that information to the user. Okay, let's run this piece of code. Let me copy that code from my side. Okay. I already prepared something, but I will just remove everything. Sorry, give me a second. Trying to find the okay, that's just a copy from this part. Okay, I copy that piece of code and write it here. So now you can see that this piece of code is exactly the same as we shown in the slides, lecture slides. And now I just need to start the server again and see if this piece of code can read data the user input in that form, and see if this processor can set some feedback to the web page, to the user. Let's do it. So I'm running this server. Okay, and then I just need to refresh this page. And now I inputting some information. For example, the username, I would say Ian, and the password is 123456. Confirm passwords 123456. Select male and year 4. And now I submit this information to the processor. And you can see that's actually the processor really get the information and send some key information back to the server. That means the process is working, right? And now you can see that the feedback information is exactly the same as we prepared here. So here we mentioned that we are going to send this information back, this response from the server, and then we are just attach the user's inputs, passwords, gender, and year in this piece of information. And you can see that the passwords I just input is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the gender is 2. That means we are sending, actually, we're not sending male or female to the user, to the server. Actually, we're sending 1 or 2. 1 is female, 2 is male. And that's why we got the number. Same for the year. And we sent year 4 to the server. Actually, we sent 4, the number 4 to the server, and the server send the feedback. That's the basic interaction when we involve the server processor into this process. So now we can see that we are already communicating with the server, and now the server can get some basic request from the web browser, from the user. Any question about these parts? So for these parts, I don't need to worry about this technical stuff. Basically, we just want you to know like what the main things in this piece of code. Just let me know if you have any question. And then we are moving on to the next part. Okay. Okay, this is a step 3. We receive the user's registration request, and we get the user's request information and provide some very simple feedback. Now for the fourth step, we are trying to make the web page looks better. As you can see that our web page or the registration form is looks pretty bad. And you can see that's only the information. There is no style. So here we are going to make this page looks a bit better. How we can do that? We are going to introduce another technique called CSS, cascading style sheets. So this kind of tool or technology allows us to make this web page looks better. Basically, it defines some rules to describe how the HTML elements are to be displayed on your screen. Because what you can imagine that when the web browser loads or render your HTML page, so basically it's reads every element on that page. So CSS is helping you to define the elements on the HTML page. This defines how it looks like, the size, the color, the style overall. And for example, in this part, previously in that page, we have a header, H1 or H2. And then basically the H1 and H2 has its own native definition about that tag. Probably H1 means font size 20, 60, and H2 means a smaller font size. But now using cascading style sheets, we are able to define the style of H2. So say, for example, we can define H2 should have a color of red. And in addition, we can also like define the size of the H2 should be like 100 pixel. And then or even the font of this tag. Basically, CSS can allow you to define different style of that elements on your web page. So for now, we are trying to improve the style of all of these elements. But of course, it will be super difficult for us to write every style by ourselves, right? So we cannot define that username or the input elements should be how it should be look like. We can do that, but it will take a lot of time for developers. So that's why there are some libraries or framework allow us to use. There, like you can imagine that there are a lot of library allow us to just insert this library in our website, and then we can use that existing styles from that library. So today we are going to use the Bootstrap library. So you can see here, I actually already insert that bootstrap.main.csl file in our project. So if I click it and open it, you can see that it's already compiled, but you can see that there is a lot of definition for different elements. And then when we insert this, say for example here, I'll give you an example at the beginning. So you can see here, as an image, when we are using the image text, and there will be some specific definition for the image. And then when we insert this image text in our web page, the web browser will interpret this image style properly based on the definition in this file. That's too big, and I need to close this. So now you can see that actually I have created a new page. Using the Bootstraps, the library, I actually enhance the style of our registration form. So you can see that this is bigger than the previous page. You can see that this is our previous register page, and only has some very basic elements. And here you can see that there is lots of different tags, HTML tag. And then for each tag, so there will be some classes. So actually all these class in the HTML tag actually has been defined in the Bootstrap library. And then when the web browser load this page, they can interpret these classes properly. So here you don't need to understand this detail, but you can see that when we have an existing library, we can define the style of this page and make the page looks better. Now let's give a try. Here, let's run the projects again and try to access this and look how this looks like. Okay, run it. Okay, and now let's access it. What the name of it is registered boost. So this is the page. When we access it, okay, let's copy this first. Should be the same, right? Okay. Now you can see that it looks much better, right? We have a color of that button, and it has a proper size, and you can see the fields. Let's compare it, right? Okay, let's have a look. So you can see that this library even help us to like adapt the style based on the screen size. You can see that. If we make the screen size bigger, it will show as a web page, But actually, if we make this smaller, that means this page might be more suitable for displaying on a mobile screen. While we are going to show it as a browser. So you can see the difference. This is a very basic element, but after applying the existing library, and we can improve a lot. But basically, in terms of the functionality, they are performing the same operations. So we can also input something. Let's have a look. For example, Tom 111 and 111. Now I select the female and year 2. I submit it, and we'll get the same feedback from the server, right? So here in this step, we are not improving anything from the server end. We just improve it from the look and feels perspective. Improve the form style. Any question in this step? All right, let's move on. The next step is interesting. Okay. Step 4 is make the web page looks better. And step 5, we are going to use JavaScript. Actually, we introduced JavaScript last lecture when we introduced the active content. Remember that when we introduced the security issue that active content is popular when we developing some websites, but it also has its risk. But here today, we are going to try to introduce how we are going to use JavaScript, the active content. So when you actually fill out some online forms, for example, a registration form, actually sometimes you will get some feedback from the server, or not server, actually you get some feedback on your web page. It could be an alert, could be a piece of red text information and tell you that, okay, probably your password is not strong enough, or your username has been taken. That's a very, very general feedback. Actually, for some of this feedback, actually is not from the server side. Some of the feedback actually generates from the front-end side, which means they use the JavaScript to actually check your information that will be submitted to the server. But this piece of this checking will not be reaching out to the server. They will do this kind of checking or validation on the front end side. Let's try to understand this piece of code. So this piece of code actually trying to validate if the user input the same passwords in that 2 fields. Remember that in the registration form, we have 2, one is password, and then you also need to confirm your password again. So this function, a simple function, only checking if the passwords, if that two password fields are the same, the value in that two fields. And if the password is not same, we are going to give an alert to the user to tell the user, okay, you wrong password confirmed. You need to like input the password again. If the passwords that are the same, we are going to submit this form to the backend. That very simple logic. Let's have a look at how this implemented. So here, I have a separate JavaScript file. We call it registerboost.js, and then you can see that this piece of code is exactly the same as we're showing in the website, in the lecture slides. And now let's run it, and you can experience it. Okay. Now, let's refresh this page. We're not going to use this old form anymore. And now we're using this one. Let's place Alice. And the password, first password, I will input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the second one, I will input 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 6, 1. And for female and year 3. When we submit, let's have a look. And you can see that I got the feedback immediately. That means actually this validation didn't happen on the server side. The validation actually happens on our web browser, on this front-end side. Only when the passwords are correct, remember that only when the passwords are the same, and the web form will be submitted to the server. So this form information never reach out to this part, the server side, because the validation didn't pass. Okay, so for example, if I change this password, the second password, to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, now I should have the same passwords, means the register form information should be submitted to the backend, right? Now when I submit it, okay, that means the server give me some feedback. So this is how the JavaScript works in your website. Actually, it's help you to do some validation, do some like there's a lot of like complex process that JavaScript can help you to do. Means for a website, now you are moving some of the process or operations to the front end, and some of the process will be handled on your front end, and not all of them will be submitted to the server, because we know that the server is or you can imagine it's a single place that handles all the requests from hundreds of millions of users. If they are sending every request to the server should have a very, very strong power, right? But now if we move some of the functionality to the front end, which means on this particular user, say for example, Ian's web browser, and Ian's client sides can handle some of the requests, and this request will not be passed to the server. That will be a big release for the server side, right? But as we mentioned in the last lecture, because this is running on the client side, there might be some possibility like we'll have some risk issues for the user. But that is another topic. And now we have introduced CSS and JavaScript. So for the last point, we are going to handle some complex stuff, which is save the database, save the information to the database. But before we save the information, we have to create our database. Today I'm going to show the database, show this on the MyCircles database server. Let's have a look. I already installed the server here. So now you can see how many databases I have in my server. Sorry. Here, I already created database for our projects because elect the 3610, and there are some other defaults databases. And now, if I'm going to show you what kind of table has been stored in this database. As use elect 3610, and now we are in the database elect 3610. And next step is I'm going to show you all the table in this database. Actually, there's no table. So I'm not going to give you some detailed information about what is the table, what is database, and how many table could be stored in the database. But today, because we have a user submits a piece of information to the server side, to the processor, and now we want to store this information somewhere in the database. For each of the database, there should be different table to store different information. Say, for example, for your online shopping center, there should be one table to store users' information, one table to store your product information, one table store the purchasing information, something like that. For now, I'm going to create a new table to store the new registered users information. For now, you can, I'm just going to, here in this page, I'm just going to copy this piece of information. This piece of code allowed me to create a new table called user in our database. And in this table, there will be 5 fields. The first one is the user ID and username, passwords, gender, and year. And you can see that these 4 fields are the information the user submits to us. So I'm going to store all this information in this table. Okay. Let me just copy this piece of information. Copy that and run it here. That's working. Okay. And now let me show the table again. So all the tables. And now you can see that there is a new user table. But if I am using some SQL language query to search anything from the user table, and you can see that we just create a table, there's no information, user information in that table. So this is empty. Now what we need to do is we need to save this user's submit information to this table. That's our aim. So you can see that in the first step, we already create that database for that, for storing that information. It's done. And the second step is we need to connect like in the processor, remember that? We only received the information and sent some feedback to the user. We didn't connect with the database. Now we need to do that. We need to connect with the database and save the information to that particular table. So this piece of code allows you to connect with the database and then insert that information to the table. Let's explain this a little bit. So here, you can imagine up to here, down to here, like connection, about everything above the connection. That is something you are trying to connect with the database. So say, for example, I'm going to connect with my Circle database, and then the database name could be elect3610. And here in this example, I input my shop, but later we will change it. And for the database, normally there will be a username and password to be able to use that particular database. It's because all the database has like the protection of this authentication information. So it will provide this because I set it my my database as the username is root and the password is root. And then now in this line's connection, this is like the step that we connect with our database. And now this line SQL, that's the most important piece of information. You can see that I'm trying to insert some value into the user table. And what is the value? The values are, okay, the username, the password, the gender, and the year I got previously. Remember that in this piece of code, we already got that value, and now I'm going to insert this value into that table. So let's go back. So you can imagine that this piece of code allow you to insert that information to the database. And then in the last phase is like executes all these operations on the database side. Okay, let me just copy the piece of code here and run it. Okay. So you can see that previously we have this piece of information. For now, I'm going to replace all of this. I'm still getting the data, getting the information the user submitted, but for now I need to connect with the database. So they are exactly the same, but the difference is here I'm going to give some feedback to the user. Let me just sorry, just to write another piece of. Okay. Let's add a little bit and say, like previously we put the passwords, year, and gender information back to the web browser, but now we only get the feedback to the write some feedback like you have been registered. Okay, so now this piece of code, a lot of user submits the information and the processor receive that information and then save the information to the database and then send a piece of information back to the user to tell the user that you have been successfully registered. That's the logic of the processor. Now let's run it. Okay. Same, let's go to this page. And now I'm accessing the same register page, right? And now I call this the username ABC. And the password is 111111. Confirm it, should be the same. And I put a mail and year 3. Let's submit it. And ideally, I should get this piece of information. You have been registered. Let me try. Okay, that means I got that piece of information. It's more likely that the server side already successfully handled this request. But let's have a look on the database. So previously, you can see that this is an empty user table. Now let's search it again. And yes, the user's here. This is a username, password, gender, and year I just input. So let's do it again. If we can, the name is a hello and 123456. 123456. And this is a female and year 4. And submit the button, submit the form, and let's check again. Now we have 2 users. And then the user also has a feedback. Sometimes, like when you interact with some websites, actually you didn't just get a piece of text as a feedback. Sometimes they will redirect you to another page and give you some information like, okay, you have been successfully registered and please log in on this page. So here we just give some text as a feedback, but we can improve this a lot. Okay. Let's go back to this page and refresh ourselves again. So now we can see that when the user accessed the register form and open this page on the web browser, and now we are able to input something, the gender, the username, the year, and passwords, and submit this request to the registration processor. The registration processor is the piece of code that's trying to connect with the database. And we also show that how to connect with the database, use a piece of code. And we are able to ask the database to store all the information we get from the user into that database. And then as a response, we send a piece of text to the user to let them know that you have been successfully registered. In the previous lecture, we mentioned that in some places, we mentioned that middleware. Actually, middleware is a place that connects from the user or connect the user with the database. We can imagine like this. So actually the registration processor, you can just simply interpret it as a middleware. Or here. So for this piece of code, actually is a very simple middleware. You can see that the logic is super simple here, but actually we can, based on the requirements, based on the operations logic, we can make this piece of code more and more complex. Here we just get this information and insert the information directly to the database. But say, for example, maybe here we can do some validation, see if the username has been registered before, so that means when we get this information, this username information, we should select this username from in our database and see if there's already a user is using this username. If we find a user, we should get some put some feedback to the user, to the user who want to use this username, to let them know that you should select a different username because it has been taken. So that means based on the requirements, based on the process, we can make it very, very simple, very, very complex, and even multiple processor or classes to handle that request. But here you can just interpret this part as a middleware. So now let's have a look on the structure of the project. From the beginning, we have a very simple static HTML page, just showing some basic information. And then we make it a little bit complex because we want to show an online form. And then we have a couple of inputs here, allow the user to insert, enter their personal information. But one issue is that this simple form is too ugly. And then we create another one is using the Bootstrap library to try to make this web page looks better. That's another step. And in the backend side, there are two steps we implemented. First one is we just get this information, simply get this information and send a piece of feedback to the user without connecting with the database. And then later on, after we create the database, we try to connect it. And the most important part is here. We basically insert the username value from, like we get the username value here, but insert that value here in this, insert that value of the username in this line. Username, same for password, same for gender and year. So after this piece of operation, database has the records of this new user, and then we send a piece of feedback to the user. So that is the basic interaction between the client side and the server side, and then how to trigger the database to store store the user's information. So basically, every web application or mobile application is using the similar interaction concept like this one, but based on the platform or based on the requirements, based on the logic, these projects can be getting bigger and bigger, and millions of lines could be for a website. Let's go back to the slide. So this actually the last step of this interaction. Any questions about the code?
Professor, I have a question.
Yes.
So it's actually about the website prototype that we're going to submit.
Yep.
So I wanted to know that it was said that we also have to submit the prototype submission doc along with the prototype. So is it the same as the prototype submission template that you've shared on Canvas
yes.
audio?
Yes, that is the doc you have to submit.
And also I wanted to ask that what all will the prototype.zip folder contain? I mean, what all should we put in the .zip folder that we submit on Canvas related to the prototype submission?
So let's go back to the, just one sec. any question about this lecture? And if you don't have any question, we will jump back to the assignments, and let's have a look on the assignment submission. Let me try to find out the prototype submission file. Okay, so in this prototype submission file, first you have to input your personal information. And here we ask you to, the most important thing is the URL. As we mentioned that in for your prototype, you have to upload your project to as a cloud project, and then you will just paste that URL here. And then there are some informations about your projects, about your use cases, high-level capabilities, and scenarios. Scenarios are the most important part because we are going to operate your website, operate your prototype based on the description of your scenario. So here you just need to describe the operation step by step. What you want me and the tutor to operate your system, operate your website. Say for example, here you can say, first you should access the website's URL, and then in the login page, you just input the username as ABC and the passwords as 1234556. And then you will see you'll be redirected to a homepage, and in the homepage, you just click this button to to purchase your item, and then you will be redirected to the shopping cart page, something like that. So we are going to follow your instruction in this section to do the basically to try to understand and then try to examine your prototype.
It is basically the step-by-step instruction of how to execute the 2 use cases that we've selected, right?
Yes.
So we select 2 use cases, and it's just step-by-step instruction on how to
yes.
implement.
Yes. Yeah. Because as we mentioned that previously, for a online shopping center, you're going to have a page list all the products. But we want the website should be interactive, means that I should be able to click a particular product, or even add these products to the shopping cart, or check the detail of this product. But this page may have 100 items. You don't need to implement 100 items. So you just implement 1 or even 2, and then in this section, you just let me to click that particular item you already prepared. So that you don't need to implement the whole website. Actually, we just want to understand the logic between the pages and how to complete your use cases. That's the information you should provide clearly in this section.
If you're using Adobe XD, in that URL column, can we just paste the shareable link? Is that enough?
So which part?
If you're using Adobe XD for making the website prototype,
yes.
the URL part, is it enough if I paste the shareable link? That is the...
Yes, I think so. But make sure that you test the URL before the submission. Make sure that it's working. Try on the different web browser, or even you only want me to test your system on a particular web browser. You just leave some comments in the last section. Okay. AWS XD should allow you to generate a URL easily, and you just copy that email and paste, copy that URL and paste here. And as the last step, you only need to submit this submission doc on Canvas, and we don't really want to have your prototype file. Okay.
So it's enough to submit only this doc. We do not need to submit any prototype files.
Yes, because we just want to see the running application on the cloud. But I know that previously we have some groups that actually build a mobile application, and they are not be able to submit the application on the cloud. So in that case, they can actually book appointments with me, and they can run this mobile application or website on the computer, and I just try to get instant operations. That is a demo. If you want to show this demo, you don't need to submit this document on Canvas, but you have to make an appointment and show this appointment on week 13. But I recommend you to use Adobe XD just to build a website rather than just to build a prototype rather than build a whole mobile application. Because we don't want you to spend too much time on the technical stuff.
Also, I wanted to ask that there's also some presentation video submission document that's uploaded on Canvas modules.
Yes.
So do we need to submit the .ppt file along with the presentation video submission template?
No. Same for the I'm pretty sure that in that document you will be asked to submit a URL of the video. So you just submit the video on YouTube and give us a URL, and we are just checking the YouTube video.
Okay. And will there be separate links to submit the prototype submission document and the presentation submission document, or both?
Yes, we are going to create the assignments on the Canvas system. So as you submit any normal application, normal assignment, there will be 2 assignments, and then you allow you to submit the documents of the video and the prototype. And in the video and prototype documents, you just put the most important things is you put the URL in that document, and then when we download these documents, we will check the URL and access your videos or prototype. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thanks a lot.
No worries. We're trying our best to finish the final proposal assignment marking early next week. Hopefully you can get the feedback, get the marks and feedbacks in the next week. And in the rest of this lecture or this semester, you will be only focused on the prototype and the presentation. I'm going to I have upload the lecture slides, tutorial slides for this lecture, but you don't have to spend hours of doing the configuration, doing the coding. So if you're interested, you can spend a couple of hours to try to do some small experiment, but I don't want you to spend too much time if you're not interested about it. So it's completely optional. Okay. Any other questions? All right. That will be the lecture. Okay, we'll have 3 lectures in this semester, and for the last week, in the lecture of week 13, we are going to have a review session. In that 2 hours, we will go through the most important points of each lecture, and that will be important. Make sure that you are joining, at least you're joining the last lecture. And then there will be some, you can ask some questions during that lecture. Okay, thanks very much. I'll stop sharing. Thank you.